Hi everybody, Plato here. Thank you for all that support on that last video. I really do appreciate it. You guys said you wanted a tutorial, so here we go. We're going to start right away, no BS. Let's go with our gear first, then we'll cover our skills, our skill tree, and also our Paragon board. Starting off for our helmet, the two stats that I would recommend is going to be intelligence and cooldown reduction. The tempers here aren't going to matter, but just try to get them to the best you can. You know, whether it's like max life, armor, corpse tendril size, decrepify size. Don't try to brick it intentionally, but the tempers, again, really don't realistically matter if you're just going for the one-shot Uber Lilith kill. However, cooldown reduction is going to be the most important stat, and then intelligence, and then max life if you can. The reason we're going to want cooldown reduction is we need our army of the dead to be at a certain low enough cooldown so we can cast it both on the first phase of Uber Lilith as well as the second phase of Uber Lilith. So definitely do focus on that. All of our armor pieces are going to have rubies because max life OP, and the aspect we have here is blood getters, so our skeletal priests now empower us at 70% effectiveness. For our chest piece, we have int, life, and golem mastery. You definitely want golem mastery. If you don't have golem mastery, try to find a chest piece with at least golem mastery, and it's a bonus whether if you have both int or max life, right? Up to you. Tempers for this isn't going to matter. Try not to break your item. Try to get the best you possibly can. For the aspect, we have hardened bones for a bit more survivability for ourselves and our minions. Moving to our gloves, we have int attack speed, crit strike chance. You can get either of the two options here, you know, whether it's attack speed or int, attack speed or crit chance. Even if you have something like crit strike damage, that works as well. The reason I like crit chance and attack speed is just so, you know, it buffs up our minions, more attack speed for our minions. Also, more attack speed for us means we can cast our summons faster, which helps. Doesn't really matter too much for Uber Lilith, but it does help when you're doing pits and stuff and you're just spamming your summons so you can get that Flesh Eater bonus more. And we'll talk about that more a little bit later. The only temper that matters here is going to be the golem damage. The other one really doesn't matter. Try not to break it if you can, but if you only roll golem damage, that's perfectly fine. The aspect we have here is Grasping Veins for that crit strike chance. Doesn't really matter that the second part of Grasping Veins isn't working right now. The 25% crit strike chance for 6 seconds when we cast Corpse Tendril is going to be huge for us, because we want to be as close to 100% crit chance as possible, just so when we go in with all of our damage buffs and we hit the golem button, we know that mofo is going to crit. As you can see here, I'm at about 62% crit strike chance, and a little bit of this is being supplemented by our skill tree. We're going to go into that a little bit later. But when we cast Grasping Veins for that 6 seconds, or sorry, Corpse Tendrils for that 6 seconds, we basically have 100% crit damage. So I know every time I do my whole combo and I press that go button, my golem is going to crit for the massive DPS. Moving to our pants, nothing really special. Int, max life, armor. I would recommend just having int or max life as the 2 out of the 3 stats. The reason I have armor here, one being my temper, is just so I hit armor cap, which is nice that they show on the tooltip now after the latest update, because all of this gear that I use here, minus my ring swap, is the same gear that I use for the pits. The aspect here, we have Occult Dominion for the additional warriors and skeletal mages. Not so much for their damage for Uber Lilith, but more so that they can apply Shadow Blight faster. And that's going to help and be supplemented by our boots, which have the aphotic aspect, which our skeletal priests empower our warriors to deal shadow damage. The stun here isn't going to matter since Uber Lilith can't be stunned. She can be staggered, however. That being said, the 3 stats we want to focus on here are going to be intelligence, max life, and movement speed, but the most important stat we want here is going to be movement speed, because we need, I would say, around 160 movement speed to be comfortable to avoid the one-shot ghost that she spawns in the second phase. That way we can just literally circle the map with no effort, and the ghost will just follow us, being ever so slightly behind and not being able to one-shot us. So definitely get that temper on move speed. Have it roll with move speed as well, and intelligence. And the +3 evade charges definitely helps to dodge those ghosts, but definitely not necessary. You just want to focus on move speed, int, and move speed on the temper here. Moving on to our weapon. We have intelligence, max life, and crit strike damage. So for this one here, this is really helpful for me in the pits having that max life damage, but if you're trying to go for like the big DPS numbers for the one shot, something like intelligence, vulnerable damage, or flat damage, and crit strike damage would also work. For our tempers here, we have minion attack speed, which is helpful, and we also have golem damage, which is required. So if you don't have minion attack speed, that's fine. You can definitely want golem damage. So again, wherever we can get golem damage, we want golem damage. And the reason we use a scythe is because the damage per hit is higher than a two-handed sword. You can definitely still use a two-handed sword, but that higher damage does mean that our golem does hit harder. And for the aspect here, we are running Blighted. And that is just going to give us a massive 240% multiplicative damage for 6 seconds when our Shadow Blight key passive damages enemies 10 times. And we get Shadow Blight thanks to Aphotic Warlord boots for our warriors, as well as our mages being Shadow Mages. And we'll cover that Book of the Dead in just a little bit. But yeah, our Shadow Blight is going to stack up super fast. And then we're going to just be able to do our nuke, that whole combo, which we'll go into a little bit later. As far as the gems here, I have emeralds just for that additional 50% crit strike damage. Moving on to our amulet, we have attack speed, crit strike, and Hellbent Commander. The reason being is Hellbent Commander is OP, and if you don't have an amulet with Hellbent Commander, I recommend getting one with Hellbent Commander, bare minimum. The other 2 stats are very helpful, but they're just icing on the cake, right? If you only have 2 out of the 3, that's perfectly fine as well. That being said, the tempers here are going to matter, again, just for the golem damage. Since I use this in the pits, the active golem cooldown reduction is super helpful, but since you're just doing this for the one shot for Uber Lilith, golem damage is really realistically the only temper you need. Try not to break the other one. The aspect we have here is going to be Unyielding Commander, and the reason we're going Unyielding Commander for the aspect is it provides us, when we use our Army of the Dead for that duration of Army of the Dead, 150% increased damage for our minions. And this is not additive, even though the tooltip says there's a little plus sign. That's incorrect. This is multiplicative. So that's 150% multiplicative damage when we hit the go button with our Army of the Dead. And as an additional bonus, our minions get super tanky as well. For all the gems here, we're just going to be using our diamonds, just for that 8% resistance to all elements. You can realistically put whatever the heck you want for the gems. This is just what I did. As far as the other attributes, for the amulet, you can do something like int percentage is what I meant, sorry, max HP along with Hellbent Commander, but I definitely like having the attack speed and crit strike chance, personally, but you can do whatever you really want realistically, just make sure you have Hellbent Commander. Moving on to our ring, we have intelligence, attack speed, and crit strike chance. You can kind of play around with your rings if you want to, if you don't have something perfect, but I swear to God, rings with at least one of the 2 out of the 3 stats here drop consistently, and you can just go to the enchanter and get the other stat that you want. You can also do something like crit strike damage. That also works on the ring too, just an example, or really any other damage stat, but I like having the attack speed and the crit strike chance. The most important temper here is going to be ultimate cooldown reduction. Well, I guess the 2 most tempers, because you want both, right? You want the golem damage and you want ultimate cooldown reduction. If you don't get either one of the 2, go on to the next ring. That being said, the reason we want that is, again, like I alluded to earlier, golem damage means our golems hit harder for the one shot, but ultimate cooldown reduction means Army of the Dead has a lower cooldown, which is going to be required to be able to cast it for both Phase 1 and Phase 2. The aspect we're running on our first ring is going to be reanimation, so our minions gain increased damage while alive up to 39% after 10 seconds. Moving on to our second ring, int max life crit strike chance. Like I said, see, both of my rings, they don't have the exact same stats. You basically just want like 2 out of the 3. It really doesn't matter. You do so much damage, but if you want to see the bigger damage numbers, you can definitely kind of mix and match your gear to kind of min-max that. Again, for our tempers, we have ultimate cooldown reduction and golem damage, both required, as I explained why. And for our aspect, we have Frenzy Dead. So when we summon our minions and they damage enemies, they gain 15% attack speed for 3 seconds up to 45 seconds. Now that we've covered our gear and I've kind of explained, why we need some of the stats and some of the tempers, we're going to go ahead and move on to our Book of the Dead. So for our Book of the Dead, we are running Skeletal Warriors Reaper. And the reason we're running Reaper is so that our Reapers have a 15% chance to carve the flesh off enemies, forming a corpse, which is going to be important when we do our Uber Lilith combo, and I'll explain a little bit why. But the reason we choose this over the wind-up giving us a reduced cooldown for our active cooldowns is because if you select this, you also get the bonus of this. It's bugged right now, so you get 2 for 1, Buy one, get one free, pretty much. For our Skeletal Mages, we are running Shadow, so we deal 3% increased damage for each active Shadow Mage. Extra damage is always going to be nice for us for our big DPS. And for our Golems, we're running Blood. Specifically, we're running the second one in Blood, so that when our Blood Golem is healthy, they gain 25% damage reduction, but most importantly, the 50% multiplicative increase in damage. Now that we've covered our Book of the Dead with a little bit of a jump cut that you probably didn't notice, let's go ahead and talk about our skill tree. Skill tree is pretty self-explanatory, but I'm just going to cover over some of the main points. You just want to grab 2 random points here so we can go ahead and go into Supernatural Blight for that 20% increase in damage, which is going to be part of our combo. 3 into Hued Flesh for a little bit extra corpses, which is always nice. 5 into Blood Mist because I like to have that extra cooldown reduction, whether I'm doing the one shot or just generally running in pits. And this is also kind of nice to have a lower cooldown on Blood Mist if you panic easily when you're getting chased by the ghost, so you can have an oh shit button 2 or 3 times during that phase. And we definitely want Ghastly Blood Mist, where Blood Mist leaves behind a corpse every second, because this is going to be an important part of our setup before we actually go into fight Lilith, and we'll get into more of that a little bit later. 3 points into Skeletal Warrior Mastery, self-explanatory. 1 into Grim Harvest, so we can go ahead and take 3 into Fueled by Death, which gives us a 9% multiplicative increased damage when we consume a corpse for 6 seconds, and this is also going to be part of our combo for that damage boost. 3 into Death's Embrace. 3 into Death's Approach for extra movement speed, which is going to be super helpful for running around for those one-shot ghosts. 3 into Amplify Damage for more damage when you use Decrepify. And for Decrepify, we want to go into Abhorrent Decrepify, because this combined with our 2 ultimate cooldown reduction on our rings as well as the cooldown reduction on our helmet, the second you cast Decrepify on Lilith on that second phase, you're going to see that like your 30-second on Army of the Dead just literally go to 0 in an instant. But it can only be supplemented to get to that point, to have it up in time to do our combo again when you have those cooldown reduction tempers on your ring as well as that cooldown on your helmet. That being said, Corpse Tendrils, so we can go ahead and take Plague Corpse Tendrils here. And the reason I have 3 points here is usually when I run pits, I have it at 5, just so I have more Corpse Tendril spamming whenever I can, because for the pits, it's nice to have Corpse Tendrils up pretty much all the time. And this is only going to be, this is our only source of vulnerable, which is going to be super important for our combo, so we definitely want to go Plague Corpse Tendrils here, just so we can apply a vulnerable for that additional vulnerable damage. Here we go next into Neurotic for extra Fortify, a little bit of survivability. Then we have 7 into Golem Mastery thanks to our gear. This is self-explanatory. For Army of the Dead, we want to go all the way until Supreme Army of the Dead, because we want to pop this again one more time at the very last stage, because while we're running around the platform, our minion AI isn't the best, and they're either going to die randomly to Lilith, or, as my Golem loves to do from time to time, just fall off the cliff. This isn't going to help bringing Golem back, but this is going to help bring up all of our other mages back for that last final blow we need to deal to Lilith, and we'll get into more of that when we get into the tutorial. 3 into Inspiring Leader. This is self-explanatory as well. We get extra crit strike chance when we're healthy, and this is also what helps us to get to that base 62% crit strike chance you saw earlier when I went over my stats. And then here for Hellbent Commander, this is self-explanatory. Our minions deal more damage when we're close to them. Great for our Golem going smash. And lastly, we have Shadow Blight here. And this is going to be great to combine with our Blighted for that massive 240% increase in damage when we have those 10 Shadow Blight stacks. Now that we've gone ahead and finished talking about our skill tree with the jump cut that you definitely didn't notice because I completely butchered my words just like I just did right there, let's go ahead and quickly talk about our skills that we'll be using. However, before that, here's a quick look at my stats. I know everybody likes to see this, so I'm just going to quickly go zoop and zoop. Don't tunnel vision on this too much. Your stats don't need to be what mine are exactly, just as it's, you know, depending on where you're at the game, where you're at with your masterworks, they're going to vastly differ depending on your items as well. Just follow what I said earlier about the gear and you will be set. And of course, follow the instructions for the tutorial a little bit later and you will be set. For our skills, we have Decrepify for the additional damage with Amplified damage and that lucky hit for the additional cooldown reduction. Corpse Tendrils for vulnerable and also Grasping Veins. We have Blood Mist for our Get Out of Jail Free card and to set up our corpses in the beginning of the fight. We have Golem for our big DPS. We have Army of the Dead to supplement our big DPS with the Unyielding Commander aspect, and also raises our Skeletal Mages and Warriors because they're gonna die when we're getting chased by the Ghost, I guarantee you that. And then raise Skeleton for our Fueled by Death bonus as well as our Flesh Eater bonus, because anytime you use this, you're gonna go ahead and consume 1 corpse, and Fueled by Death, 1 corpse, 9% extra damage. Flesh Eater, 5 corpses, massive 40% damage, which we'll cover in the Paragon tree. One other thing about consuming a corpse is that when you consume a corpse, and we'll get to this more when we talk about our combo, it does activate a Photics aspect, so we can stack Shadow Blight faster. But now that we've gone ahead and covered our skills that we're using, let's go ahead and take a look at our Paragon tree. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This is just a quick overview. We have Amplify for the first board. We have Dead Razor for our Cult Leader board, and Cult Leader is amazing, by the way. This is also where we get a shit ton of damage. Then we also have Essence in our third board, and this third board is going to be Bone Graft. Then we have Gravekeeper on this board, and this is going to be the Hulking Monstrosity board, another great board for a Golem. One thing I want to mention is you do want to go to the planner and go ahead and, try to make your skill tree as close to mine as possible, because I made it so where I did all the math for the willpower in the deck, so you get the additional damage bonus from mutation as well as borrowed strength. Then we go on to our next board, which is going to be Flesh Eater, which we talked about for that massive 40% damage, and that's where we're going to have Corporeal. And Corporeal, this is another way that I alluded to earlier, which we're going to get a bit more movement speed, right? For every minion that we have, we get increased movement speed, which is going to be super nice. And then we're going to move up here to Scent of Death for some damage reduction, and we have Golem here for obviously that additional massive Golem damage. And then for our last board at the moment, we have Exploit here, and that is going to be Bloodbath. And that is pretty much our Paragon tree, and now let's get to the juice of it, the tutorial. All right, guys, the moment you've all been waiting for, the tutorial. So the first thing we're going to do when we get into Lilith's pit is basically go into Blood Mist and poop out 3 corpses, and then consume them right away with Ray Skeleton. So what's this going to do is it's going to stack up 3 of our Flesh Eater stacks, so it's one less thing to worry about when we do our whole combo, because that whole combo is going to be a little bit more complicated enough already, so it's nice to save a little bit of time of prepping these corpses. Once we've gone ahead and prepped these corpses, we're going to swap Blood Mist to Blight so we can use Blight's additional 20% multiplicative damage with the rest of our combo. Now we're just going to go ahead and wait for the cooldown for Blight to go down, and then go ahead and start the Lilith encounter. So when Lilith drops here, I just put a little Decrepify just for that little bit of increase in damage. I just do this just because it's a habit of mine, just spamming Decrepify everywhere. But the most important thing we want to do here is wait for our warriors to go ahead and cleave Lilith to drop a corpse. It's either them or Hewed Flesh. It doesn't matter how we get that corpse. The second we see the first corpse, we want to consume it right away. This is going to do a few things. One, it's going to go ahead and activate our Fueled by Death timer for 6 seconds, which while we won't get the damage bonus for this right now, we don't need to, because this is going to serve as a mental timer for when we hit the go button. More importantly, when we consume that fourth corpse, it goes ahead and activates Apothic's aspect, and our mages will now empower our warriors to do that shadow damage to go ahead and apply the blight stacks faster. That's what I've seen happen anytime we summon an additional mage, is that it just activates Apothic. Let me know in the comments below if that's something you've noticed as well. Maybe that's just how the interaction is supposed to happen with that aspect, but that's at least what I've noticed. So we have our fourth stack. We have our warriors now going to be doing Shadow Blight really fast, as you can see here, and we also have this timer of Fueled by Death running out. When this timer is about to run out and we're about at 6 or 7 stacks, what I'm going to do is reapply Decrepify, just so we have that damage bonus from Amplify damage up, just because Decrepify only lasts for 10 seconds. So you can see me here, I pop Decrepify, and when we're about to get to 7 stacks, I now pop Corpse Tendrils. You can see me pop Corpse Tendrils here, and now I'll consume that 5th corpse so we can get that Flesh Eater damage bonus. And I'll consume that 5th corpse right as the timer for this Fueled by Death runs out, as you'll see here. Boom. Fueled by Death ran out. I went ahead and popped my 5th corpse for Flesh Eater, and then it reprocs Fueled by Death for additional 6 seconds as well for that additional 9% damage. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit Blight. I did it really quickly. All of this has to be done in pretty quick succession, but you can see me going ahead and pop Blight right there, right after my 5th Corpse Tendrils pop. Boom, you can see kind of me dropping Blight in that middle, just so we get that increase in damage. And when our Shadow Blight is around 9 stacks, I go ahead and pop Army of the Dead, and at that point, the vulnerable from the Corpse Tendrils is going to snap back and apply on Lilith. And the second we have all of these buffs up, right, we have that Corpse Tendril snapping back for vulnerable. We have our Fueled by Death. We have our Flesh Eater. We have our Shadow Blight. We have our Blight. We have our Decrepify. All we got to do now is hit the go button on Golem, and there she goes. One thing I've noticed people ask about this specifically is they ask, Plato, I did the same thing you did, but Lilith just flies up and she goes and starts doing her phases, right? Spawning the minions, flying up and down, doing all these waves. That happens if you don't nuke her fast enough before she gets to a certain HP threshold. Usually it's around like here below 60% HP. Sometimes there's a bit of leeway depending on how the damage is buffered, and it can get about to half HP. But generally speaking, if you don't do enough damage by the time her health bar hits here, so basically popping her like so, as you saw there, right? You're going to have that instance where she's going to fly back up and come down and do all of her mechanics. So either you messed up on the combo, and it does take a little bit of time because it is a little bit of practice to get the timing right for everything, or maybe you just don't have enough damage and you do like 2 hits in succession, so you just get her health bar down like below, you know, that threshold, and then she'll do her mechanics. But generally speaking, if you can go ahead and pop her around here-ish, maybe even here a little bit, you should be good to go. But that's why she's flying up and down, is because you didn't pop her before she got to that threshold to start her mechanics. But once we've gone ahead and popped her here on this first phase, you can see our buffs just run out pretty darn quickly, and now we can set up for that second phase. And of course, if you can't get this pop right away, practice makes perfect. It is a little bit of a time window that is small that we have to do all those buffs and damage in, but once you figured out that time window, it's pretty darn easy, and you can consistently do this over and over again and carry your friends. So when we go ahead and start the second phase, we're going to do the same thing as the first phase. We're going to go ahead and consume those 3 corpses, and we're just going to wait for Lilith to spawn. Hey guys, Future Play-Doh here. Really quickly, I completely spaced and forgot to mention how we lower that cooldown of Army of the Dead. Remember, we want those cooldown tempers on the ring, as well as cooldown reduction on our helmet, and the other ways I mentioned we can also get additional cooldown reduction if you happen to not get them on your ring, etc. What we're going to do is when Lilith spawns, we're going to pop a Decrepify over her body. What that's going to do is allow Abhorrent Decrepify to go ahead and proc those lucky hits when our minions are attacking, as well as our Reapers, and that's basically going to instantly take that cooldown down from like that 27 seconds instantly to 0, so we can go ahead and continue with the combo. So that being said, enjoy the rest of the video. When she's going to go ahead and finish that spawn animation, we're going to go ahead and consume that 4th corpse so we can start that Fueled by Death timer again, and also empower warriors to apply Shadow Blight faster. And I just pop it to Decrepify like always, right? Now we're just going to go ahead and wait for that timer while Blighted is being stacked. And as you can see, the Fueled by Death timer has run out. We have about 7 stacks on Shadow Blight. I go ahead and pop our Grasping Veins. I go ahead and pop Blighted, consume our 5th corpse, and also pop another Decrepify. And when we go ahead and have our Shadow Blight and 10 stacks here, we go ahead and once again hit that go button, Army of the Dead, wait for that Corpse Tendrils to snap back for that vulnerable damage, and press Golem. And there she goes. If you want to go ahead and see that one more time really quickly, because I did go a little bit faster in this explanation just because we went over it in the first phase. This timing window is going to be exactly the same as we did on the first phase, right? When we have that Fueled by Death timer run out over here, let's see here, Fueled by Death timer is running out. We're going to go ahead and pop our Corpse Tendrils. Then we're going to go ahead and consume our 5th corpse, pop our Decrepify again, then pop our Blight, and then go ahead and use our Army of the Dead. And then when the vulnerable hits, we go ahead and pop our Golem, and she's just dead. This is also where we have the time to go ahead and swap back from Blight to Blood Mist, because we won't need Blight for the remainder of the fight since she's already at 1 HP, and that Blood Mist is going to go ahead and help us out to dodge any of the ghosts if we panic. But this part is super easy. You just wait for the first little ghost that you see here, and you want to go into a clockwise motion. I recommend evading over this little platform here, because sometimes there's like invisible rocks or just rocks that are just on the ground that's going to block your pathing and you might get stuck. So just to be safe, I always like to evade over here, and then I just go ahead and go in that clockwise circle. I go ahead and pop another Corpse Tendrils here. This is just to get her stagger bar up a little bit, so I like to set it up just in case I don't get that instant pop when she drops back down when she is damageable after she breaks all the platform, that she will be able to be staggered with 1 more Corpse Tendril, so we can go ahead and deal that damage without having to deal with her echoes. Sometimes you're going to still get the echoes no matter what, depending on game logic or whatever, but generally speaking, you don't have to worry about the echoes, and she'll just either be staggered or die instantly once you go ahead and, you know, pop a Golem on her at the end phase, as you'll see me doing here in just a bit. But yeah, I went ahead and did that Corpse Tendril, applied a bit more stagger. Now we're just running around. We're going to wait here on this platform. Here I like to Decrepify and just bang her one more time with the golem just to really make sure she's at 1 HP. And then once you see that first little ghost fly back here, as we saw here, we just want to go back ahead and continue that clockwise pattern. I go ahead and always, like I said, evade here. You should be able to survive this flame, even if it does a little bit of damage, since you will be fortified. Just check a potion, or if you're scared, Blood Mist. But I generally like to save Blood Mist for the last platform, as you'll see me do that in just a bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and go in a circle here, go in a circle here, go in a circle here. Nothing too special. We're just outrunning the ghost because we have that movement speed. And when we get to this final platform, I'm just going to go ahead and Blood Mist so I can get to this platform. I actually end Blood Mist early, around over here. This is simply because while you're in Blood Mist, your minions just kind of ignore you and they don't follow you. So we want to exit Blood Mist when we kind of get a little bit clear from these ghosts. And then instantly after Blood Mist, I like to evade and pop our Army of the Dead, so we have all of our minions back. There we go. There we go. All our minions are back. We're still going in the circle to avoid everything. When she goes ahead and drops down here, I do one more Corpse Tendrils, and then I'll do a Decrepify and pop her. I lied. I didn't do the Corpse Tendrils here. Generally speaking, I tried to spam the Corpse Tendrils, but I guess my inputs didn't buffer fast enough. But usually if she doesn't pop after popping your golem, or if your golem dies, you can always use that Corpse Tendril, stagger her, and your mages and warriors will finish her off if your golem happens to just fall off the platform because he's stupid as F sometimes. But that's pretty much it. That's just Fight in a nutshell. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this tutorial. If you have any more questions, leave them down in the comments. Hit me up that like, subscribe, and I'm live on my Twitch at twitch.tv/PlatoBear when I can. So feel free to check me out there. Until the next time, peace.